I'm Rachel from Rachel's Guest Tutor at Pretty Witty Cakes, and in today's little free tutorial I'm going to talk about planning and setting for a wedding fair. Now that is something I have done quite a lot of. I don't tend to do them anymore. I think that's maybe because I've established my business. The only odd little ones I do are at a local country house close to me because I get to do it for free and I'm their recommended supplier. But when you're first starting out, when I first started out and I really wanted to get my name out there, you might want to sign up to some wedding fairs. Lots of venues will do wedding fairs. It's good because it encourages clients to come to that venue to look round. And it's also nice if you can pick a venue that's close to your home because then it's much easier for you to supply cakes to that place. But other places that also do wedding fairs are the bigger venues, like in London particularly, there's Olympia. There's also a big setup in Battersea Park. So yeah, Earl's Court, all those places tend to do really, really big fairs. So if you were going to throw yourself in at the deep end and do a big fair or a little fair, you do need to be prepared. Just like the brownies and the guides, you do need to know what you're going to take. You can't just show up and think, oh, I'll wing it. I'll just talk about this, that and the other. Clients are going to come along and they're going to want to see that you look professional. So I'm going to give you some tips about coming across as a professional. I'll tell you one little thing. When I did my very first wedding fair, which was actually at Olympia, I did throw myself in at the deep end and I hadn't really made many wedding cakes. So I went along that day, I'd made some demo cakes and I had to sell myself. And I was very scared, but I did. I sold myself and now I'm here where I am today. So put the effort in and you'll get it right, okay? So you might be thinking, what shall I take along to my first wedding fair? So you're going to have booked a space. Maybe you've got a 6-foot table or they've given you a 3-meter square area. You're going to need to fill that area, okay? So think about what you're going to take. It's good not to overclutter that space, but maybe take a good variety of cakes that you've made beautifully. So 6 beautifully made cakes is going to be better than 15 really badly made ones. And those cakes that you do take along, they're going to be dummy cakes. Don't take real cakes because that's an awful waste of your time. So make up some demo cakes and spend time at home making them beautifully. And if you're only taking 6 cakes, make sure you've got a good variety. So you're showing a cake that's maybe square. You're showing one that's round. You're showing one that's chocolate. You're showing one that's vintagey and you're showing one that's fun. So make sure you've got a good diversity of examples to show to anyone that might come round. So how are you going to display those cakes to make them look really fantastic? When I did my first show, we're going to flash up a little picture for you now. I actually made my own podiums because I had an area in a very, very big expanse at Olympia. I actually wanted my cakes to be stood on pillars and I didn't have much money. It cost me a lot of money to stand there and do the fair. So I actually bought some wood and made my own pillars and that elevated my cakes up to a really nice level so that people were looking at them at eye level. And it really stood out. If you were walking down that corridor, you could see them all at the end and people would be like, ah, there's the cake lady. So think about that. Or maybe you're doing a wedding fair at a small venue and they've just provided you with a table. Make sure you take something to dress that table. Maybe it's a beautiful vintage lace tablecloth. Or if you've just got a white tablecloth, take some little placemats or some rose petals, something that's going to make that table look really pretty. I would also suggest getting stands for your cakes. If you just put a cake flat on the table, it can look, it doesn't look ugly, but it gives it more elegance and it elevates it if you can get some stands. So take a nice variety of stands. And you've got different heights. So if you've only got a small table, put your shorter cakes to the front and then elevate some of your taller cakes and have them all along the back so that you've created a really nice perspective and something attractive that people are going to want to come and look at. If you do have any spaces you need to fill, even some sweet little knickknacks, if you've got the ability to suspend something behind you, little additions like this are going to draw people's eye and it's going to make your stand look attractive. Another little thing I tend to do is, get some flowers, get a couple of vases, get some nice floristry, and maybe you might want to consider some little tea lights if you're in a venue where you are allowed to put some, use some actual fire and have a flame. Do light a tea light and just put them around and it starts to make everything look really pretty. One of the most important things to remember when you're at a wedding fair is people need to know who you are. So give them something that they can take really easily that's going to say, I'm Rachel, my business is called Rachel's, this is me, this is my number. So anything you give to a client that day, if you do need to write something down for them, try and do it on a comp slip. I have normally, if I do a fair, have these little business card holders so people can easily take my card. I might have one at one end of the table and one at the other. This is actually a thing for screwing onto a wall or attaching to some wood. I used to have it attached to my pillars, and I have some slightly larger postcards here that just give people a bit more of an idea of who they came to visit. There will be other cake exhibitors there. Whoops! So you need to stand out. So give them something nice to take home. So write any little notes on comp slips. These are really quite cheap and cheerful little things that people can take. If you are going to give them a little goodie bag or some samples or something, this is a cheap way of popping in your information rather than giving them a huge, enormous brochure that's cost you a fortune. Also, try to brand what you're wearing. You can see today I've got a lovely little apron on with pretty Witty Cakes across it. When I've done exhibitions in the past, I've worn a t-shirt with my business name across it. And also it makes you look a bit smarter. I've often had an assistant with me, so I give her a t-shirt too, so the two of us are wearing the same thing. Come across as much more professional than if you're standing there in some scraggy old jeans and trainers. So do think about that. If you have the ability to have any kind of media there, and you have a laptop or what do we call them, a little iPad, it's a really great way of showing people additional images, or you could set up a sort of show reel of images and have it on a little stand off to one side. So if someone said to you, "Oh, Rachel, do you do those whirly chocolate cakes or those ones with cigarellos?" and you haven't got one on display, then you can easily access your portfolio and so flick through and you say, "Here you go, these are some cakes I've done before." So do take some form of media along if you can do that. What else do we need to tell you? Pricing. I've hummed and hawed over this a little bit. I have been to shows where I've had my cake on display and I've had a big sign there going, "This will cost you £500. It's a tricky one because I like to know what I'm paying for. So if I was walking along, I'd want to know that that pair of shoes was going to cost me £1,000 or £10. So you need to decide whether you want to answer everyone's questions after the show. How much was this cake? How much was this cake? Or even when you're at the show, if you've got 10 cakes on display, people will always want to know how much it is. So to save having to answer that question again and again, it might be a good idea to price up the cakes that you have on display, and then you can reference people to your website for any further pricing if they need to. And if you're a bit price shy and you don't want prices on the cakes, then you will just need to say to them, "Please refer to my website," but do make sure that the cakes on display are already priced up on your website and that you've got them all loaded up there before the show. That's really important. Another little thing when you're at a wedding fair, sometimes people expect to taste your cake. I don't like giving out samples at wedding fairs. People make a mess. You've got to worry about nut allergies. You've got to give them the cake on something and then they drop bits and it ends up all in front of your stand. I personally would say no, don't give them cake samples. But again, let that be your choice. Maybe you just take along little bits of fruit cake, and it very much depends on the kind of fair that you're doing. But my preference would be to, if they want to taste your cake and they're really serious about using you as a supplier, do book an appointment and come for a consultation, and there you can taste everything. One last little note about wedding fairs. When you're standing there, you've got your lovely t-shirt on, your cakes are all looking beautiful, everybody's coming along and they're firing questions at you left, right and centre. Make sure you've got yourself a couple of nice pens that work and a nice clipboard. Buy something fun that's going to match your brand. So my name is kind of pink, get a pink pen, get a pink clipboard. And I would very much suggest, I've done a little form here. Do your own form at home on the computer, but this is just a suggestion for you. I've just printed out a simple grid, and when people come along and they're actually showing an interest, do try to get their contact details, because I think after a wedding fair, if you follow up anyone's interest, it looks really good to just send a nice follow-up email saying, Jessica, thank you for showing interest in my cakes at the show. I see that your wedding is in July and you're interested in a chocolate cake. Would you be interested in coming for a consultation with me? I look forward to hearing from you. Something quite as simple as that. And then if they do actually want to come back to you, then at least you've prompted that interest. Whereas if you just give them a little card that sinks to the bottom of their bag, they're trying to remember who you were. So many people are chatting to you that day that it all gets a bit of a blur. Getting their details is really important, so at least you can do that first bit of follow-up. So on your form, just several simple columns. You want to know their name. You can write the partner's name down as well. You want to know the date of their wedding, so do get that right. Make sure you've got the year correct. You want to know their venue. If you can get a postcode or the full venue, then do write that down. Email address. Now, I'm going to say, when you write the email address down, even if someone's got a really complicated email, don't give them your clipboard and let them write their email address down, because the amount of times I've gone through my contact forms and got the email address wrong and it's bounced back to me because I couldn't quite work out whether it was a 5 or an S or what they'd written. So you write their email address down and make sure you do it in capitals and that you can read it really clearly. So that's a super tip for you. If they don't want to give out their email address, maybe you could take a contact number, but I would say email address is the way to go. And then just a little note, if there was anything particular they were interested in, chocolate cake, fruit cake, black chalkboard cake, just write a little note, because when you do that follow-up email, you can then reference, I heard you were interested in the cake with fresh flowers. And it just makes them feel like you had listened to them amongst the other 1,000 people at that wedding fair. And I think I've pretty much given you some of my best tips for wedding fairs. So take your time, make sure you plan it, and get someone to help you, because it can take quite a long time to set everything up and make it all look beautiful. So a little bit of help is always good. I hope you get on really fantastically at your first wedding fair.